All right, so why don't we get started? It's exactly 12 o'clock Eastern time. Again, thank you to everybody that joined us a few minutes early. We're glad you're here, and thank you for putting some notes in the chat throughout the conversation. So it's 12 o'clock noon on March 29th, 2023. And the reason I mention that is for those of you that are going to be watching this on demand in the future, keep that in mind. I think most of the concepts and the principles that we're talking about here are pretty timeless, but as you know, especially in this industry, things change. Even things in terms like growth marketing, change. I'm not sure that this was part of our vocabulary several years ago. The principles are certainly a lot of what a lot of us have done and embraced in our work, but things change and they're a bit of trends, so keep that in mind. For those of you that are watching this live on Zoom, please put some notes in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a shout out if you agree, disagree. We'd love to try to spark a lively conversation. And again, if there's anything in particular you'd like us to cover in the next few minutes as we're going through, we have about a 45 slide presentation, but only 60 minutes. I think it's pretty active and engaging as we go through. So not a lot of us hopefully droning on about this. And the level of the topic we'll be talking about today is a little more than 101, not quite 201 level course, but we'll start with that. Well, I'll tell you about the agenda in a couple of slides. No need for me to get ahead of myself. So hi, I'm Paul. I'm Paul Fahey. Vice President of Smith & Jones. I work with a really talented team here. Katie, does far more than just our event and webinar producer. She's a content strategist for a number of our different clients. Lisa Barone also is a brand strategist that we work closely with, as well as Richard Skiermont and about 50 other people from our parent company of Over It Media, located in upstate New York. As you know, we produce this series on a variety of topics, usually guided by what you see on the screen here. We launched the second edition of our book, Under the Influence, the Anthology of Healthcare Marketing Best Practices. And that has become a bit of a guidebook and playbook for folks. If you're registered for this event, send us a quick note. We'd love to send you a free copy. It covers everything from branding, service line, generational marketing, crisis PR, and it was written in particular post-COVID, I guess if we are technically post-COVID, but with an eye toward changing consumer empowerment, consumer decision-making, and some of those things that have been accelerated during the pandemic. It's also available on Audible if you'd like to hear my voice for that as well. It's good for the commute. And on the right, you'll see, and what we're basing today's webinar on is our 2023 marketing trends. This is the 10th year that we've been doing this. We put out this trends report every fall, really to help healthcare marketers to get a sense of what we see as the issues that we should be focusing on in the coming year. So this webinar series, all of this content is available for free. We try to put it out there, to not only give back to the industry, share our knowledge and expertise. We don't believe it's only available for folks that are engaging us on certain types of projects. So we like being part of the conversation, and hopefully you're getting some value out of all of the above. As I mentioned, the co-authors of not only the white papers that we issue, the trends report, the book, my colleagues Katie and Lisa as well. So a quick shout out and really grateful thanks to both of them for just all the work that they do throughout the course of the year for our clients and the content that we're sharing with you even today. So a bit of a table setter quote, this famous quote attributed to John Wanamaker 150 years ago: "Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half." And I think that that's a good table setter for any of the conversations we're having regarding measuring your marketing efforts, and how you can harness that data to help grow your organization. And all of that is sort of at the core and essence of what growth marketing is all about. And when we first wrote the first edition of this book, Smith & Jones authored this back in 2018. At that time, the surveys that were being done showed that we were only tapping into about 5% of the data we have. And as healthcare organizations, and certainly the larger we go from freestanding hospitals to health systems to really major networks, there's a tremendous amount of data, a tremendous amount of robust data. And we're really only hamstrung by our abilities to sell ourselves internally to those leadership teams to say, we need the skill sets and we need the tools to be able to harness this. And we'll talk throughout the presentation this morning about the benefits of all of that. This isn't us just trying to create busy work for anyone, but as you'll see, this concept of growth marketing, which is really just a relatively new buzzword, has been there forever. And I think it can help organizations really, frankly, grow. So this, phrase that we had put into our book and attributed to him, from decades ago, really rings true. And I think as organizations are tightening up their budgets, as your trustees and your C-suite are becoming much more demanding, this idea of thinking and working like a growth marketer, it's a concept, it's not necessarily a position, it's a set of responsibilities that can and should be owned across your whole organization. But with the challenges we're all facing as healthcare organizations over the last, certainly accelerated over the last several years, to be able to prove once and for all what's working, what's not working, to see and track consumer behavior and look at that as a forecasting tool and a proof of return on marketing investment, is more essential than ever. If for no other reason than to grow our organization, there's self-preservation because our trustees and our C-suite are asking for us, a dollar spent, and then is it being invested wisely? Is it being refined and optimized? And that's what we'll talk about in the next few minutes. And to that last point, I think it's important that we think and act and work like growth marketers. So we'll get on the same page. The differences between marketing and advertising, we'll define a bit about what growth marketing is and maybe how it works, showing a few examples. We'll talk about why hospitals and health systems really need to think like lead generation sales organizations. Frankly, though your mission is noble and timeless and your charter may say that you're a nonprofit, at the end of the day, like the old saying, no margin, no mission, we do need to work and act in many cases like a business. And that's why I think we're pulling that phrase of growth marketing from a lot of other industries. This is actually a really good example of our companies. So Smith & Jones is owned by a parent company, Overt Media. Overt has a really, really robust immersion into growth marketing for a number of industries that are heavily dependent upon lead generation, home service companies, whether it's heating and air conditioning, pest control, et cetera. If those leads aren't coming in from whatever the inquiry is, the technicians are sitting in the office, the trucks are sitting in the parking lot, and there's absolutely no revenue. And so the work that Overt's refined is really helping us to cross-pollinate that and push that a lot deeper into a lot of our healthcare clients as well. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about the metrics and dashboards and some of the tools that you may already have available to you, depending on the type of CRM and software that you're working on. So first, let's get on the same page with this concept of what is growth marketing. A client of mine actually at St. Peter's Hospital 25 years ago, Elmer Streeter, had this exact saying, and it was on the whiteboard in their office, in their marketing department office. Marketing is not the same as advertising. Think of marketing as that broadest set of things that an organization does to promote and sell products and services, no matter what industry you're in. It is the broader strategies. It is, everything that goes into, promoting and selling products and services. Within that, there are so many subsets, of which advertising is a piece of it. Advertising is a tactic. Public relations is a tactic. There are a number of different things that support marketing that are distinctive from. And so wanted to get us on that same page. Marketing is that broadest set of activities. Advertising is a tactic. Marketing focuses on building relationships with customers, in our case, patients, to make sure they know what a business provides. we have CRM tools. That's part of marketing. We should have our data analysts. We should be reporting on these things. We should be advertising them. And so the advertising just really looks to get that message out. That's really the difference. But I think it's an important distinction, as we talk about what growth marketing is. So when you go into that textbook-driven, definition, it's essentially a mindset. It's a strategy. It's a work philosophy focused on very long-term sustainable growth for organizations. It takes all of those marketing tactics, web, advertising, email marketing, public relations, everything, your signage, your community presence, your community engagements, all of those things, and pushes it into a very data-driven environment, typically through your CRM. Many of you are using Salesforce, for instance, and healthcare marketing cloud, tools like that, I think that can help, that weave into your ERPs, which we'll talk about in a second, but all of it, to provide really, really rich data on, who's paying attention to our organization, who's engaging with our content, who's giving us buying signals, and how are we moving people through that continuum? How are we identifying them? How are we going from those digitally automated processes and dropping real humans in for contact, for closing, and all of those sound like, and they are, concepts that are borrowed from or born out of commercial businesses as opposed to healthcare. So done right, I think the benefits of that, will be increased visibility for your brand across all channels, increased performance on all of your platforms, whether it's email, web, social, advertising, et cetera, and just really helps to grow your organization, since a lot of this pushes through your website, and that becomes that sort of, touch point between your digital media and your CRM, or email, all of it sort of coming through the website. I think that's why we put that at the center point of this conversation. And there's my Ring doorbell, sorry. So examples of growth marketing, I mean, there's a couple different aspects of it. One could be content marketing, which is, ways to engage customers that have that relevant, valuable content. Say you're a bariatrics service line, you want to grow that service line, ways to do that are get out there with information that people might need to or want to know about what's happening, with their own personal health. How do I measure my BMI? How do I look at all those different aspects within that, and educate me about the process, about the journey, and everything else that I could possibly be going through. So for hospitals and health systems, I think that could be a lot of content like blog posts and ebooks and white papers, videos about various, healthcare topics, anything that can educate someone about the importance of weight loss to their overall health, but can also tell them about the journey that's ahead of them and the steps and processes. That content is attractive. It's content that people can find and identify. It's content that can engage people as they're going through that whole journey itself. Search engine marketing, search engine optimization, also a very important aspect of growth marketing. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Moving back through. And conversion rate optimization as well. When you look at the conversions that your organization is seeing, growth marketing will be pushing all of people through that content. They're either going to see it through good SEO, as we talked about half a moment ago, as we saw the website, content strategy that we talked about a moment ago. All that's going to be moving through your site, whether they're arriving at landing pages, the website itself, but that conversion rate optimization is all a very important growth marketing tactic. It looks at what are people clicking at, what are they reading, what are they signing on, and even within email, what are the things that they're engaging in and reading. And so optimizing these forms, optimizing these conversion points, whether it's in an email or in this case on a website, is all really critical to that whole process. And so one of the other things and one of the other mindsets that I'm hoping to change, and one of the things we advocate for, is thinking of the marketing department not as overhead, but as a revenue generating department. I think getting your C-suite, your trustees to understand that the budgets that you're given, the staff that you have, all of that is accessible and available to the organization and should be seen as an investment. A dollar spent, should be able to be optimized and refined and proven to return, a greater investment. So, as I mentioned before, there's an increase in accountability and a demand for that return on marketing spend. I think of it as that. Marketing has its budgets and it has its accountabilities. And I think we should be accountable to our marketing spend and not necessarily the overall return on investment. You may be throwing the ball, but there's nobody in the end zone to catch it. You may find yourself promoting things, but all of a sudden there are capacity issues that haven't caught up to the marketing aspect of it. And as a result, the return on investment may or may not be within your control. And so I think that's a critical and important distinction. We should try to think of it as return on marketing spend. So lovely background. Growth marketing, and again, back to that definition of it, in this whole process brings marketing and IT together. IT is typically the place responsible for all of those databases, the patient information, certainly the ERP, but how our marketing tools speak to that is critical that we have IT at the table. Now, in a perfect world, you'll all zipper up to the same VP or someone in the C-suite that's responsible for all those different perspectives. They don't look at them as silos, and it may be easier on an org chart to bring them all together. And a key piece of this, as I was alluding to a couple slides ago, is that automation. Email marketing is one of the richest tools that you can have once you've got those people in your contact database, once you've had them sign on to learn more about information, or if they're within your system already for a certain set of services that you've provided the opportunity to upsell and cross-sell, all within HIPAA, can be done effectively. And so those automation tools, when somebody fills out a form, the email sequence that they're served up, when they click on something in the first email, what happens downstream, that concept of retargeting, when I've hit your site, your ads follow me for the next several days or weeks. If all those things are in place, you've got, again, an even richer data set that you can start to learn from as a growth marketer and look at, optimizing the entire process. And to that last bullet point, trying to push toward that holy grail of that one-to-one, very patient-centric marketing communications. Nobody wants to feel like they're part of a mass list of anything, but the more things can be personalized for a particular person's history, their health, all of that, I think, is the holy grail of where we're trying to go. So a little bit deeper than this 101 level that I promised, thinking about, and what we'll talk about in a couple minutes, is that integration of your CRM. Again, you might be using something like HubSpot, Marketo, Pardot, depending on what your tools are. You might have Salesforce embedded, so Pardot or Health Marketing Cloud. There's a number of different tools that you can be using. It might even be as simple as just, I've got constant contact over here, and I'm at least looking at who's clicking and opening and engaging on some of that content. The one-to-one marketing, as I mentioned, using that health engagement cycle, we'll talk about in a second, and bring you through that. We will talk in the next couple slides about tracking those touch points that can lead to new patients, as we bring them from that traditional, and I won't show it, but that funnel from awareness to ultimately action, and then post procedure, post-service advocacy. I think many of these tools, and if you're the fortunate ones that might be using something like Salesforce Marketing Cloud that is fully integrated with your ERP, you've got a very clear picture, or at least the potential for a very clear picture on that return on marketing spend in real time. You can see, and this rivals what a lot of the pharmaceutical companies can see, the data on activity that's happening out in the marketplace and, what's happening in terms of consumer engagement. Ultimately, that net revenue per patient is that ultimate goal. It's extremely elusive. Some of the largest health systems are barely doing it, but the ability to look at what's in your funnel, sent out a campaign, a digital media campaign on our social media, a lot of other platforms on the web. People are starting to click on it. They're, engaging in the content. They're learning more on our landing page. They're signing up for more information. At any point during that process, from the moment it launches, you do have the ability, and a lot of these tools have this ability to look at this data, and create predictive models. I know if I'm going to e-blast to 10,000 people, that 1,000 are going to engage in our content, and that will ultimately result in 10 patients that have a lifetime value of X or a procedural value of X. And that, I think, is probably one of the simplest descriptions of where we're trying to go as healthcare marketers and as growth marketers, the ability to take a dollar spent and predict that it'll have this type of return on investment within the organization. So we'll go through this idea of CRM integrated marketing. It'll be a very sort of one-on-one emphasis, a very patient-centric emphasis. All of these are guiding values and principles that go into what we're all calling growth marketing. So those ERPs that I talked about, this is probably very familiar. 95% of you watching this now or on demand in the future probably fit into one of these. These are, within your organization. And they're interfacing with any of these types of tools that I've been describing, Health Cloud, HubSpot, Marketo. These are amazing tools that can help you launch campaigns on a number of different digital platforms. And through inbound calling, through custom phone numbers, QR code tracking, you can take your traditional advertising and start to push it all through that digital system as well. So with one of those ERPs on the previous slide, connected with one of these or similar marketing platforms, digital marketing platforms, you should have the basis for everything you could possibly need or want, and all the data at your fingertips to be able to launch these types of campaigns. And I think one of the things that's important, and we were looking at this over the last couple of years, a survey, I think this was SHISHMED, and I think it was about 1.5 years ago, surveying marketing directors, many of us, asking about changes in their traditional media budgets for the coming year and digital media budgets for the coming year. And there is this, wholesale shift away from traditional media. 39% on the left in orange, reporting that they're going to be decreasing their traditional media budgets, and 84% on the right increasing their digital marketing budgets. The interesting thing about this is because it's all driven by this data-rich environment. Certainly traditional media has, its place. I think it's all part of it. You've heard us describe this before. An entire media campaign should be like, baking a cake. You need all of those different ingredients, flour, sugar, everything all, in the mix. But that ratios can switch up. Certainly there are critical ingredients like baking soda. However, the ratios between different things can be optimized depending on the media market that you're in. More rural environments, will start to favor higher traditional media budgets. But in general, I think part of the reason we're pushing into digital is for its, and social as a subset of digital, is for its ability to look at the hyper targeting, as well as all of this data for predictive modeling, for proving ROI, and for helping to grow the organization. So the benefits of doing this, obviously greater response rates on marketing initiatives if you know what's happening, if you're integrating all of this, that you can demonstrate that return on marketing spend through downstream revenue of procedures and encounters. If you can take pixel tracking from that Google ad, which landed on a landing page, which turned into a sign up for an information session for a bariatrics procedure, which then converted to a patient, you can know that 50-cent, $1.50 click, somewhere out in the web turned into a $50,000 procedure. And to my point earlier, the third bullet, the predictive modeling, is really where organizations want to see our marketing teams go. It's one thing to say, hey guys, get busy, put the ads out, and then 6 to 12 months from now, we'll wonder and see what happened and hope that there was some causality, some cause and effect between the work we did and increase in patient volume. But if we can, using these tools, track, the budgets we were putting out, to my earlier example, and I'm going to email 10,000 people, 1,000 are going to engage, and it might convert into 50 patients or whatever those ratios or numbers are. You can go up to your C-suite and say, oh, and by the way, I'm expecting and I'm forecasting that your bariatrics department, should expect to see an increase in patient volume, over the next 6 months by whatever else it is. And so all of this, I think, can help also enhance patient experience, understanding what those key drivers are, what's causing them to click and respond, as well as the overall brand perception. And we'll talk about that as we kind of go through. So we'll chat for the next couple minutes about health system CRM data, that kind of CRM data 101. Growth marketing strategy, as you've heard, and what I'm trying to reinforce through this presentation, is the importance of growth marketing strategy is really nothing more than marketing strategy that harnesses the data you have to make your campaigns smarter and better, and to be able to prove your return on marketing spend and help your organization forecast workload and revenue. So it'll see those buying signals, it'll understand behavior, it'll help optimize the campaign efforts that we were talking about. Even at the simplest level, if you're a small community hospital with none of those tools that I'm describing, and you were about to stop play on this recording, the ability to see, through constant contact, I sent an email out to 1,000 people, and 100 of them, actually clicked to read the rest of the story that's on my website, or they clicked to watch that video, or to sign up for something. Those are buying signals. Those are, not random activities. I don't care who opens an email necessarily, but even some of the simplest tools can give you those buying signals. And you may want to turn over those reports to say, hey, these people clicked on the, sign up forms, let me know if they attended the event. If they didn't attend the event, I can go back and maybe email them one-to-one and say, hey, thanks, recently you signed up for something, or you might have clicked to learn more, but you didn't sign up for, finish something. Taking the voyeurism out of it, I think it can be very interesting to, think of those and see those as leads and nurture those throughout the whole process. So how it works, and with this concept of this CRM very centric, you'll know your patients. To that circle at the top, you'll have a sense of who they are, where they've come from, and even within your ERP and some of the data that's available, you can start to see those patient journeys, especially for folks that have comorbidities. They might be treated for diabetes, but in for surgical procedures, or, whatever. And there may be an opportunity to push them into education classes or things like that. The data-driven strategies on the left really is born out of all of that analytics and reporting. As you look at your monthly reports and you sit down with your team and say, what happened, what didn't happen, what converted, what didn't convert, you can start to adopt strategies and refine over time and say, gosh, nobody's paying attention to us on Facebook. Maybe we should spend more time on Instagram. Our emails, are performing well, but, these are the kind of topics that people seem to be, more interested in than others. All of that data can help you refine things, throughout the life cycle. The integration of data sources, again, adding up everything I've been describing through this conversation monologue, it's the summary of all that data. It's the social media, it's the email marketing, it's the website data, it's your Google ads, it's your search campaigns, all of that, integrating marketing efforts with what's happening within the organization through patient identification, and tracking all of those touch points, will be monitored throughout that entire life cycle. If there are other organizations within the company or other departments within the company that have the ability to look at this data, they can track those touch points and know that, Paul came in through an ad campaign, so I know the headline he might have seen or the thing he might have read on the landing page. And if I know that he's coming into the conversation with that in mind, we'll have a greater sense of, what his expectations are, for that, or what resonated with him. You can play back that language. And I think that speaks to the importance of making sure that anytime you're launching a campaign, interacting with and engaging with and sharing this content with the different departments. Hey, just want to let you know what I'm telling, prospective consumers, so that you can be ready to engage them in a conversation and know the promise made, the potential that's been, communicated or conveyed, whatever it could be. So this chart really looks at that whole process. We launch our campaigns, and in many ways, without the CRM tools or thinking like a growth marketer, we run the campaigns and we start to hear, maybe we leap over to that blue square in the bottom left and try to evaluate success. We loop back with our bariatrics department 6 months later and ask them how things are going. I think with growth marketing and the tools that I'm describing, I think, you run the campaigns, it'll certainly generate traffic, as many things will. It'll help you to identify qualified leads. Many of these tools like Salesforce or Marketo or Pardot will allow a scoring system. I think Marketo, I'm not as familiar with, but they used to have different fire icons. Like this one's got 3 icons. It's a really, really hot lead. And you can determine that by putting value on some of the different content. If somebody opens up an email, I really don't care, 5 points. But if you go to my landing page and you sign up on a form, that's 100 points. Or if you watched my video, that's 25 points. If you did all this within a 72-hour period of time and you had multiple visits, you visited us on social media, you clicked on this, you signed up for that, you watched that. If I know that you're doing that over a 3-day period of time, your score should be higher and I should be able to pay attention to you. That's the qualifying of leads. And again, this sounds like everything that you might expect from commercial operations that might be doing things like home services. So from there, you can start to evaluate the success of the campaign. What worked, what didn't work? Can you do A/B testing on your e-blasts? Running different offers, online to see what's happening, trying different keywords within your search campaigns. And all of that will help you optimize the campaign, the patient experience, and the cycle starts all over again. To kind of illustrate what we've been talking about overall, this full integration is this mix of, all of these things on the left. The data itself are clinical records, it's billing records, it's notes from the call center that can be added within your CRM. It's the market intelligence, it's all this web, social media, ad data. All of that, gets pushed into the CRM, into that, column in the middle there, the orange column, where everything can be connected through those tools. It can be merged and purged and deduped. It can get scrubbed. It can get standardized. So you can start to compare, the behaviors of service lines across your whole organization. You can group people by household. You can group people by neighborhood, just to start to look at, different disease trends, and then you have, and all this lives within your Salesforce, Marketing Cloud, HubSpot, Marketo, this very patient-focused data warehouse that you can then start to draw from. You can then even start to look for the potential for, these zip codes are behaving like these zip codes, but they're underperforming. Maybe there's the market potential for us to be pushing bariatric services within these neighborhoods, versus those neighborhoods. Getting into sort of 201 level integration here as well. So why does this patient-centric, why does this data-rich, growth marketing, matter to organizations? ultimately, we want to move toward a very one-to-one, experience and engagement that's tightly aligned with your organization's service lines. So that continuum goes from the left, where people are worried but well. I'm not ill, I don't have an acute need, but I think about my healthcare more than the average person. That's that start of engagement and getting them to think about you as a resource rather than something, anonymous on the web. You then have information seekers, people who are a little bit more active about their health and proactive about their health. They might be reaching certain ages or have certain, conditions that then move them into being what we would call treatment seekers. They're thinking about what they want, diagnosed, explored, or potentially treated. Then where it gets really important is that, okay, now who's the provider going to be? Ideally, it's going to be your organization, your physicians, your diagnostics teams. Once they hit that point, they've moved into hot prospects. This is, and again, everything we've been talking about up to this point, reminds us that there is all of this data that's available. Everything can tell us where people are on this, continuum. But once they hit that hot prospects, this is where they should be, like every other commercial organization, treated like hot prospects. Let's get that sales team. Let's get outbound calling if your organization is large enough and fortunate enough to have it or outsource it. Being able to identify those hot prospects and fully engage them to convert them to patients, and then post-procedure, based on the quality of the experience, throughout that whole process. I was looking for information. I found it at my hospital. I was seeking options. I went to this hospital. I sought out particular providers. They connected with me. I had a positive experience as a patient, and now I become, a longstanding advocate for that. So when you think about this, and to overlay some of the tactics, where these digital tactics fall in that patient-centric targeted marketing, take an orthopedics or sports medicine example. On the far left, that worried well person might be doing search, looking at the icon that's at the bottom. That's typically where they're on the web. There might be a little bit of word of mouth, informal sort of conversations among friends and family. But if they're doing any information, they're doing it online. They might be searching information. They might be asking people through review platforms, through social media. This is where they're going to be finding information, seeking providers. But once they hit that hot prospects level, that's where we should be retargeting them. That's where we should be engaging them on email automation after a form fill, and then continuously keeping in touch as a patient through emails, getting them to, review our organization, to sign up with maybe support groups on our social media platforms. And then as a advocate, they certainly can be and will be talking about people, and hopefully, that whole cycle sort of rolls forward again. So looking at a sample bariatric campaign, and we've been talking about this a little bit throughout the course of this morning, one of the objectives would be to shorten that decision-making cycle. By the time somebody has made a decision that, they've tried a lot of other things to control their weight, they understand the health benefits of weight loss, how we can get them to move through that process a little bit faster, I think, will ensure that they're going to be a little bit more successful as we go through. So yes, they're going to see our advertising. They're going to respond to some sort of call to action, join an information session, call for more information, that initial intake and consultation. That's where they become a lead. That's where they've identified themselves. We capture them to the CRM. Hopefully we're automating our responses. If they've signed up for an information session, they should be in an email campaign that says, confirmed, we'll see you next week. A couple days later, here's some health tips. Let's talk about the benefits. Let's introduce you to the physicians. Let's educate you on your options. Let's make sure that we're retargeting you through our ad campaigns so that we're constantly sticky and reminding you that you're thinking about us and we're staying top of mind. So like those bariatric kind of specifically, you'll go through educational sessions, you'll have those consultations, you'll be given sort of a weight loss program. all the screenings that are necessary in that weight loss program, up to and including perhaps surgical procedures or whatever. All of that and all of that data, all those interactions through all those key points can and will be, cycled through your organization, quite, visibly through your CRM and all of that information. And again, that's where, growth marketers can start to look at, this entire patient engagement and push them, as we were describing before, from initial contact through, return on marketing spend. So they'll go through, they'll complete the patient program, they'll complete their weight loss program. We can look at, all of those, things that we talked about before, and keep them on, on track, much like retailers will, through keeping weight off KPIs, even post procedure. So we're searching, we're evaluating and planning, we're qualifying and preparing. We have our surgery, we have our follow-up, we have our behavior change, we have our success throughout that whole process. Before and after, the web, your mobile tools are going to be critical. Pre-surgical engagement, you're going to have your patient assessments. Download our mobile, app if we have one. Are there online chats for people that have hesitations? Can I, connect directly for scheduling appointments? Is all this information, and it should be available on my website, and more importantly, is it plugged into my CRM so that I can start to see those buying signals and how people are efficiently, moving through that process, and where they're dropping off. There's certainly, through using a bariatric example, a number of opportunities for people to change their mind, go a different direction, pause, whatever, could affect their, patterns. But as marketers, we can understand that, and we can then, as growth marketers, anticipate that. We know that we have our highest drop-off point between here and there. So what can I tell you once you've reached that first point to encourage you to keep going through? Is it educational messages? Are there inspirational messages? What is it that's necessary to happen? And then post-surgical, we can send reminders, have micro educational topics, all of those kind of things. And just looking at our time here, I want to make sure I'm allowing enough time to kind of carry through. So looking at all of this and demonstrating that return on marketing spend, again, that's that holy grail that our trustees are asking for, our C-suite's asking for. All of these tools, either have existing dashboards or could be created, pretty simply. Our parent company Over It has their Overlytics. And with that, we have the ability to plug in all of the different things that we're doing to show the patterns, to show where people are moving into the funnels, to show where those drop-off points are. And it'll, look at quite simply and quite easily, the patients per service line, what are their profiles, what's the opportunity for cross-marketing or promotion of other services, learning about their communication preferences, when are people more likely to want to receive a phone call or engaging on mobile devices, other tools, what are those touch points throughout the system, who's a recurring patient that might be visiting again and again, or new patients, procedure targeting, all of the above can be tracked there. Salesforce Health Cloud has some really, really robust tools. And again, once these are integrated with your ERP, you can look at onboarding time for procedures, number of days that people have been engaged within a system, what the patient load is by different departments, what's that forecasting load by departments, even referral dashboards, what are the different referral sources or individuals. There are tools like Definitive Healthcare that have, not only market data on this based on Medicare and Medicaid data, but also within, taking that information about who in the community is referring people to what we already know and are, solidly know based on our own internal information. Who are the sources of this information? What are the types of insurances? where do we get referrals by specialty type, by person? All of this exists within these tools, and I think can be a really, really powerful dashboard to share with, again, trustees, C-suite, those kind of things. And even as we look at some of our own, tools, just kind of sharing, at the most basic level, what's happening with the click-through rates on AdWords data versus, web interaction, different pages, clicks on different ad groups, different ad key messages, what's performing better than something else, how are we performing over time, what are the months where we're more successful than others as we're going through. So as I'm kind of coming to the end of the presentation and trying to keep one eye on the clock and another just to see if anybody's pinging me for anything else, one of the key thoughts that I wanted to emphasize, I think, in this conversation is that growth marketing really is a relatively new buzzword. It is I guess, phrase that's, coming into fashion over the last, several years. You don't need a PhD in order to do it. It's really that intersection between the marketing efforts that you've got, the data you want to measure, and having the right tools in place to be able to measure the performance of it, as well as that return on marketing investment. The CRM systems today are much easier to use. I mean, I'm kind of scratching the surface. We could do hours and hours on each of the slides that we covered. But know that these are very user-friendly, tools and systems that you can use. They certainly have the data that your organization's looking for, not only to predict and forecast workload, but also to measure what's happening from a marketing standpoint. It would provide tremendous opportunity to segment service lines and get to that sort of one-to-one patient-centric marketing. And again, that last point on the slide there, it really ties the marketing tactics to downstream revenue, which I think is super important. So final considerations, as you're thinking about this, you're interested in taking a deeper dive, thinking about what the overall organization goals is essential. What are the priority service lines? What are the baselines that we have right now within the organization? How many procedures? What's the revenue? Whatever it could be. Then identifying, okay, here are the service line growth strategies and objectives. We want more bariatric patients, for example, for these types of procedures, for these physicians. What's the infrastructure and process going to look like, not only from a marketing standpoint, but operations, as you've kind of heard, and I hope connecting the dots. The more marketing is integrated with operations, the people that are doing the intake, that are, working on the information sessions, they know where prospects are coming from. But going through that training, process to tell them not only, what the campaigns are like, what their expectations internally should be, but also, how to respond to inquiries, how to nurture leads through different, places, how to train staff, that this is not an addition to their job, but, this is part of their job to follow up on these opportunities specifically, and track and respond to leads as aggressively as possible. And getting all those folks at the table. It starts in the boardroom. I think it starts with the annual strategic planning meetings, but letting folks know we have to be more data rich. We've got to be more growth driven. We need to get marketing and IT at the table for sure. We need the C-suite to guide our strategies, be ready to hold us accountable to the performance. Looking at patient experience teams, whatever they look like within your organization, are we able to live up to the promises that we're putting out from a marketing standpoint? The business development, or referral management teams that you might have within your organization. Certainly service line VPs and directors, will need to be part of those conversations because it's their departments that we're promoting. And obviously the communications team that's responsible for the advertising, for the digital marketing tools, will be, right at the center, helping to deploy and push all of that out. So with all that in mind, that's a very brief introduction to growth marketing as a concept, what it means to healthcare, hopefully embedded a few examples to better illustrate how it works, the potential for it, mentioning some of those tools. So in terms of next steps after this presentation anyway, as many of you know, we host these conversations. We're going to push this out to folks that register but are unable to attend, or folks that might have missed the invitation overall. But we also typically invite people in for what we call a roundtable discussion. So whereas this is more of a monologue, just kind of putting the topic out there, it's very possible many of you have questions. And so one of the things we like to do about a week or so after every presentation is host a roundtable to really just open up the floor for conversation, learn what's keeping you up at night, answer specific questions that, in this setting may not be relevant for everybody that's on the call, and we have a number of people from coast to coast, large, small organizations, rural, suburban, urban. It's a pretty interesting mix. But I think having an opportunity to say, hey, within my organization, I have this, or I've got that, or whatever else. So keep an eye out for that. I thank you for your time today, for sure. We appreciate it. We're really glad that you're here. We look forward to future questions and conversations over this topic in the coming months. Thank you for bearing with me during that quick break where I had to go down and find flowers and stuff for my bride. So working from home. Thanks again for joining us. I hope you found this of value, and we certainly look forward to reconnecting again soon. Thanks.